So welcome everyone. We are very happy that you can join us for this special online screening of The Mountain Path, directed by Ted Berger, hosted by Dharma Realm Buddhist University. So I wanted to ask you, are you ready for the journey?
I'm ready.
Ready. We don't have to buy a ticket to fly to China or walk hundreds of miles, looking for hermits in the mountains. Ted Berger has already done that work for us and has now found many hermits, men and women who have devoted their lives to spiritual practice. We get to meet them face to face. We don't even have to learn Chinese because Ted has actually translated their pithy, insightful comments into accessible English that kind of speaks to the heart. As many of us know who are part of the Dharma Realm Buddhist University, this art of translation is not easy. And I think you can just observe how skillfully these translations are done. So maybe just to introduce myself briefly, my name is Jing Chuan. I'm here at Berkeley Buddhist Monastery, and I'm here with my colleague and fellow monk, Dharma Master Jing Wei, and he was going to share a few words about this movie as well.
Yes, as Jin Trasher says, my name is Jin Wei. Yeah, it is a very special event for me in many ways, because the previous version of the movie, Amongst White Clouds, was very pivotal in my spiritual journey. I remember years back, I was at the time layman, have more hairs, and I remember after 10 days of Chan retreat, we have a small gathering and friends show me this movie, Amongst White Clouds. And I was shocked, completely shocked. For me, it was like a deja vu. Seeing the screens, the images, the mountains, the trees, the nature, and the people, the monks and nuns, they were talking directly to my heart. And I was like, wow, they really connect to me something very deeply. And remember after that, I using this movie as a kind of a meditation. I watched numbers of times and helps me kind of tune in to this contemplative atmosphere, this kind of visual poetry, and encouraged me to find my path, my mountain, my vocation. And I'm very grateful for that. And I'm very curious what kind of impact will be on all of you around the globe here. And so right now, please relax, breathe, and enjoy the journey, going to the mountains and meeting these brave men and women in China. So ready to show the movie for us?
Journey, going to visit many. We're very fortunate that we can continue this journey and actually have a conversation with Ed and also with Reverend Heng Sure. Okay.
Yeah, so we're very happy to having Reverend Heng Sure with us today. He's in Australia, Queensland, far away. And their master, Heng Sure, has been Buddhist monk in the Mahayana Chinese tradition over 46 years, almost 5 decades. And some people know by some of our guests, maybe not, but as a young monk, he went on the 2.5-year bowing pilgrimage. And rather being in the solitude in the mountains, he was bowing with his companion on the highway, on the California highway, and dedicating this practice to peace, to world peace. He's fluent in Chinese. He entered to China in 80s and seen the hermits, monks, and nuns on the holy mountains of the China. And what is very unique is having not only seen the mountains of China, but also Reverend Heng Sure is a translator of the teaching and lifestyle to the West. And he dedicated his life and for many, many years bridging the Dharma from the West to the East and from the East to the West. And it's a kind of keep going, a living tradition and connecting the cultivators around the globe. So very happy.
Yeah, very.
Sure.
Just to briefly introduce Ted Berger or Edward Berger. He's produced many Buddhist documentaries. We just saw one. And it spans from China to Cambodia, all around the world, and also many different themes around alms round, around vows or becoming a Buddhist monastic, or just getting a glimpse of inside a Buddhist monastery. I want to also emphasize that Ted makes his film with a very contemplative purpose to bring together the inner and outer dimensions of our experience. And I thought just to share with everyone something that I discovered on his website that was actually quite inspiring for me. I don't know if people actually know, but he actually has, I don't know if you could say it's a manifesto, but he actually
vows,
but he makes his films with a particular purpose. He says, number one, authentic characters and places that reflect living traditions, which we clearly saw. Thoughtful films that cultivate mindfulness, not distraction. Just imagine if all our technology was that way. Made from the perspective of a practitioner, applying values and principles of Buddhist traditions to the filmmaking style and perspective. Very much in the DRBU spirit. Relevant, a voice in the ongoing conversation about the evolution of contemporary Buddhism, as well as cinema as a modern Buddhist art form. And 4, inclusive, represent a broad spectrum of lived approaches to Buddhist thought and practice. I thought that was a very meaningful way of expressing his aspiration in filmmaking. And my guess is in the conversation that will follow, some of those themes might play out. So maybe invite Heng Sure and Ted Berger. Wish to begin.
Hi, everybody. My name is Heng Sure. I'm here in southeastern Queensland, Australia, and I wanted to appreciate Dharma Realm Buddhist University for inviting Ted to share this one of his Buddhist films, and then his willingness to stick around afterwards and let us explore more deeply the thinking behind his journey, just what was involved in getting out to those mountains, and then also I wanted to take this opportunity to ask Ted about some of the decisions he made, things he wanted to emphasize in bringing the film to life. So let's start right there, and also appreciate Jinchuan Shi, Jinwei Shi, the Berkeley Monastery staff, and the DRBU staff for making all the conditions possible for the 250 some folks who are here listening in. First of all, Ted, tremendous film. I never fail to be inspired by your work, and I wanted to ask you if you wouldn't mind. At the start of the film, you frame it as your own inner search, that you found the inspiration that Buddhism was somewhere out in the mountains, and you thought, I want to find Zen, and I want to find a teacher. So we get to sit, peacefully in our armchairs and watch the journey unfold. But for you, first of all, getting to China and then going from Beijing, you were living in Beijing, I understand. But then to go from Beijing all the way out to Zhongnanshan, what's involved? What were the logistics in getting out there so that you could capture the images and sounds? How far was it from your home in Beijing to your teacher's door? And what was involved in covering those miles?
Okay, sure. First, I just want to say thank you to everyone in the community who's put this together. It's a wonderful opportunity. We have 258 people here with us tonight. That's a good crowd, and I'm really thankful to everyone who put this together, Reverend Heng Sure and everyone at DRBU, Jiwei Sure, Jingfeng Sure, Brenda, and Angela, and everyone. Okay, so you want to know about the journey, the how I got there. So, well, first, so the narration in the Mountain Path is more so than with the Monks White Clouds. It's very honest, and it reveals more detail about that journey, and it's true that I literally asked every monk and nun I passed on the street with whether they knew any hermits in the Zhongnan Mountains. One day I was actually traveling through Beijing because I was studying somewhere else, and we were flying kites at Tiananmen Square, and a monk walked by me, and I greeted him, and he said, "Oh, are you Buddhist?" And so, and as we parted ways, I'd almost given up, to be honest, because I asked so many people, and everyone, "Oh yeah, there's hermits there." No, I don't know anybody. And he said, "Well, my Shifu was there." So I met one of my Shifu's disciples who had grown up in that region, had gone to those mountains, had Chujia in those mountains, and then he was in Beijing at the Foshueyuan, at the Buddhist Academy. So it's really an incredible, you talk about unfolding, the yuan there is really, really incredible. Right. It dawns on me with more detail as I get older.
How far from Beijing to the hut? How many miles?
So I'm trying to remember the train ride. It was an overnight train to Xi'an, and I think it was 11 hours or 17 hours maybe. It was a long overnight train ride. Very fun, though. That's, riding on a train was really fun. And I always really enjoyed that. And once we got to Xi'an, we had to take a bus to another part of the city, on the other side of the city. And then we had to take a bus from there to a county bus station. And Reverend Hux,
Three conveyances so far, and you're still in Xi'an.
Yeah, kind of. Well, I'm in Chang'an, right? Still.
Chang'an, okay.
And then there's this. I told you when we were chatting the other day. There's this balda restaurant, this dumpling restaurant or steam bun restaurant right there at that bus stop, which always part of my journey. They made these amazing vegetarian. There's a lot of good vegetarian food in that region because there's a lot of Buddhists there.
Not to be missed.
Not to be missed. And then we would take another bus from there to the village at the foot of the mountain. Okay. And then from there you could hike up. It was about an hour and a half hike to my Shifu's place. Or you could get a 3-wheel, they call it a bum che. It's like a 3-wheel tractor with the seats. And they would take you up the road, and then you just hike a little ways to the hermitage.
So you found, that's just the 11-hour train ride to get to Xi'an, that's a major journey. But then 3 more stops before three more switches in conveyance before you get to your Shifu's hut. Yeah. And you introduced yourself, you had some connection with the monk you met on Tiananmen Square while flying kites, and then you didn't show up with your camera until multiple repeat journeys, right? Did I get it right, that part of the story?
Yeah, I had been studying with my Shifu for 4 or 5 years before I made the film. Okay. So I made that journey many times, and when I made the film, I thought the journey it embodies that great leap that you take to find your teacher, your community. And so I traced it out in the film as best I could. At some point in the film, you kind of catch up to me, because then when I leave my shirtless place and go into the mountains to meet the other hermits, that was the first time I had met them. Not met them, but the first time I'd been to their hermitages. I met some of them as they were hiking in the mountains. They would stop at my shirtless place and rest or spend the night, and I would chat with them. Where's your hut? And then years later, I would go and try the camera.
Something about the film that impressed me so much was the how close you brought us to a real feeling of, as close as you can get, as we're virtually participating, but the soundscape. And if you wanted, I've seen the phrase, the Buddhist gaze, right? So the Buddhist gaze, and I would also include in that the Buddhist ear. Yeah. The choices you made in presenting this film were very, to my mind, as you lingered on dark mountains against a pale sky. And the closest, I said, I've seen that before, Chinese landscape paintings. And first of all, that image has to be there. There's a reason why the Chinese landscape painters painted that, is because that's what they saw. But then to have your camera represent it to us in the 20th and 21st century is just astonishing. So what I'd like to know, have you talk a little bit about the logistics, the actual, how hard it is to be simple, to make a simple film, seemingly without an agenda, that makes the camera and the microphone almost disappear, to the point where I felt like I was watching the ladybug, walk across, and that I could reach out and touch it, and just how, so describe the Buddhist gaze from your point of view and the Buddhist ear. What was involved in bringing the sound so close to us?
So, yeah, thank you for asking about this, because this is something that I'm really inside of right now, as an artist. And so when I went back to my old footage and decided to make the mountain path, it was basically found footage, right? The footage was there. I couldn't alter it. I couldn't change it. So stylistically and technically, the footage was what it is what it is. So, like with One Mind, I had begun to think about this idea of a contemplative gaze or a Buddhist gaze or a Chan gaze in cinema, and I could go with my camera with that inspiration and behind the camera. But with this, I couldn't do that. So I kind of took a different approach. I looked at the footage and I thought, what's the best way to really feel centered and grounded and present with the characters in the film? And I decided that it was to be as honest as I could about the footage. So I decided to really emphasize the idea that you're looking through my camera and you're on this journey, and I kind of hold you in that perspective through the film, and I think that has a certain contemplative effect. Again, I think One Mind is more thorough in that sense, but this film also, there's a writer, Nathaniel Dorsky, who wrote a book called Devotional Cinema. And in it, he talks about the unity of the materiality of the film and the story or the ideas in the film. And so I said, okay, I'm 25. I just got a camera like 6 weeks before, and
wow.
and this is what my footage looks like. And the focus kind of comes in and out, and it's a little shaky at times. And so I decided, well, I'm going to be really honest with that and say, this is how I saw things. And amongst white clouds, there's a lot of very self-conscious cutting away because to sort of glaze over those mistakes in the footage.
Right.
This time, I thought, well, that's the stuff, that's the moment, that's where I was, and that's good stuff. So I left it all in there. And then my wife, Agnes Lam, she's the producer on this film and all my films now, and the writer. We wrote the narration together, and it was a really arduous, but really wonderful process, because the narration too, it's I feel it's very sincere, and I tried to connect with some of the pleasant and not so pleasant aspects of practice, of being on the path. Now, then I worked with Doug Quinn on the music.
Okay.
Yeah, so the music, I told Doug that I wanted it to be very organic. I wanted only to hear stone, wood, metal, and water, very natural elements. And so he had an artist create these tones using crystal bowls.
Wow.
Use those in to create the music. And there's also the wooden marimba and other instruments in there.
Okay. Well, I very much appreciate how difficult it is to get out of the way, to become invisible when you're narrating the story, without it being artificial too. You can be falsely modest, but I think you really hit the middle way in letting us see, yes, here's the guy, and yet there's no agenda. The heart of the film is the words and the expressions, the stories told by the hermits, which is powerful. The search for wisdom and for liberation is certainly not uniquely Buddhist or Taoist. It's universal in every tradition, or even beyond traditions. Would you say that the hermits had created a sacred space in the mountains, or was it that what the mountains do for the mind? I know you asked that question to multiple hermits, and one of them said, 大自然就是妄想. He says, nature is just a false thought. There's no nature. From now that you're no longer 25 years old, you're still on the path, and you've had this. You're now looking back at footage that was taken decades ago. Do you think living in the mountains is essential to purifying the mind, or does the Dharma allow any mind to be pure regardless of the environment? What's your thinking on that these days?
Okay, that's a great question. It's a little above my qualifications, I think, but I'll take a crack at it. As a practitioner and as an artist, I did ask the hermits a lot about the mountains, and I got a lot of different kinds of responses. I connected with the Dharma at the very earliest point in my life through the poetry and landscape paintings of China and also Japan. And I've come back around to that artistry as a filmmaker. And I think that in the process of, so on a personal level, when I look at mountains, I see my mind. and that's for me personally as an artist and as a practitioner. And so trying to connect to that through my art as part of my practice. Are the mountains themselves powerful, or do they somehow aid the spiritual journey? A lot of different answers to that. So you've got the ascetic hermit who dismisses the idea. But I think that when I look back on that footage, he was dismissing it to me in that moment. Because he was always trying to sort of shake me loose.
Take you up. That's right.
Ideas that I had about
not letting you settle.
Yeah. And so he was always kind of like, oh, you're kind of missing the point. It's just practice. It's just practice. On the other hand, my Shifu talks about the Dunanshan having very powerful energy.
Mhm.
And, the Dunanshan, one of the big reasons why hermits have lived there over centuries is because there's water everywhere in those mountains flowing the mountains. And and it's a very lush and alive landscape. And so he would say that there is something to that supports practice.
Right.
They're just hermits. They're usually a practice. It's being a hermit in China is part of a whole lifetime career of practice, right?
Right.
It's only maybe 5 years or 10 years or something like that, and then they go back to the community. So, so it helps, and I think it's an important place to go at a very particular stage of your practice.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Cool.
whether it's necessary or not.
I appreciate your comments.
Yeah.
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 So we also have on the call Professor Raoul Birnbaum was listening in, who has been out to Wutaishan and done multiple trips. And the same kind of idea of let's see how the living tradition of Buddhism is standing up to the 20th and 21st century. So your previous film, One Mind, myself, Jin Chuan, Jin Wei Shi, have taken it to Europe before COVID. We introduced it in San Rafael, in London, Warsaw, Krakow, Poland. I got a reaction I didn't expect. I guess maybe because I'm too close to the tradition to see it from a non-cultivator's point of view. But people were scared by the austerity in some cases, that the hermits seemed superhuman, otherworldly, and too much suffering, And yet here you, from a guy from small town Ohio, walked into that world and found the human side of it, and brought the road to heaven closer to us today and for anyone who sees the film. So could you reflect a little bit on how the hermits saw their ascetic suffering, in air quotes, and transformed that suffering into the kindness and compassion that they live with and that they showed to you? How did they were, let me say it again. Many people saw that kind of suffering. Listen to the bhikshuni, the nun, talking about eating weeds outside the door. And people kind of went, oh, no, that's, this is really foreign. I could never do this.
Yeah.
Your camera doesn't show that there's a joy, there's a lightness, there's a sense of transcendence in this experience. So how do you see the magic in that alchemical transformation? What would you say about that?
Yeah, if everyone could taste Xiangchun Cai, the Ye Cai, they wouldn't be afraid. It's such a wonderful and tasty plant to eat. Yeah, that aspect of the life in the mountains was really exciting for me to learn and get close to. Spending a lot of time in nature as a child, but I connected to it through practice with them. So she's really the point in the film where I wanted to go there, into that space of practice, the struggle of practice itself. And I was really excited to find footage of her cutting her way through the thicket, so to speak.
With a coil of hose that's this thick that she's going to string back down so she can get a dribble of water into her pot.
Yeah, I mean, it was hundreds of feet up the mountain, if I remember correctly. So, yeah, her life really embodied that, and that was something that she was really expressed very eloquently and with great depth. I also like the way that she talks about practice in terms of space. She talks about in the inward gaze, like a room that you enter, right? All of that really worked for me with the idea of a film about Dharma that takes place in mountains, in the valleys.
Right.
So, but yeah, a lot of different I guess we're, there's a rawness and an immediacy to that life, which definitely, it's very embodied. It's very visceral. That the kind of suffering that they're enduring, the hardship that they're enduring. And I think that that's something that is good for a practitioner, at least at some phase. I feel that what the hermits really, really wanted to tell me was that this practice is lived. It's in your body. You live it in the world. It's not an intellectual process. It's not it's not about your thoughts on it. It's about how you experience your life, and you live your life through your body and in your landscape. So I wanted to emphasize that.
Dave, I've been flagged that we only have time for one more. There'll be questions. There's a chance. Let's see. I'll just ask my last. I'll let Jinchuan and Jinwei guide us after this. You and I both discovered Buddhism first through books. Particularly, you and I both found the Dharma Bums, Jack Kerouac's book, as kind of the first drop that had a flavor that we were still finding nutrition and nourishment and from inspiration from. For various there's a lot. I find your film is so fruitful for a number of areas of research, a number of disciplines, for the idea of these universal hermits as shamans, somehow shamanic role for society, that knowing that there are still hermits in the mountains, it somehow grounds us in that liminal space between life and death and the impossible and the quest, and we can still be comfortable in our mundane lives and knowing that somebody is out there walking the edge and still registering that space, that sacred space. So anthropology, this is such a resource for that, and also for cultural studies. The thing that, as a monk in the Chinese Buddhist tradition, what warms my heart the most about your film is that this is the story of the Chinese Mahayana and of the Chan school brought to life. For historical reasons, in 1949, the bamboo curtain fell and Chinese monks didn't get out. The exception, notably, Master Xuanhua, Shangchuan Xiahua, Lao He-shang, who brought the Mahayana tradition to America, to North America. But to be able to see living monks and nuns doing, people would say, oh, that's Zen. Well, it's Chan. The Zen was the Japanese version. We're more familiar with that. But here is a living tradition that is going on today. And so I just wanted to express my gratitude for your telling of this story that is, by and large, unknown in the West because it wasn't available in the 20th century. So just tremendous that this is that we can point to this and say, look at this. This is alive. You've opened doors that hopefully, as you said, you read Bill Porter's book, was inspired to go look. Jinwei Sure saw your film, was inspired to pursue it. And we're hoping that today this film, through the auspices of DRBU and our wider community, will be inspired to pursue it further. So thank you once again on behalf of everyone, Ted, for making this, for opening these doors and telling the story so beautifully.